The November morning broke cold over downtown Chicago, frost clinging to the windows of the small two-bedroom apartment on West Madison Street. Marcus Chen stood in the kitchen, his movements precise and practiced as he prepared breakfast. At 42, he had the kind of weathered face that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy responsibilities, deep lines around his eyes, a perpetual tension in his jaw, and grey threading through his dark hair despite his relatively young age. "Emma, sweetheart, breakfast is ready," he called softly, his voice carrying the gentle tone he reserved only for his daughter. The sound of wheels against hardwood flooring announced her arrival before she appeared. Emma Chen, 13 years old, maneuvered her wheelchair into the kitchen with the expertise of someone who had been doing it for years. Her long black hair was pulled into a ponytail, and despite the early hour, her dark eyes sparkled with determination. The cerebral palsy that had affected her legs since birth had never dimmed the fierce intelligence and spirit that burned within her. "Pancakes again, Dad?" she said with a teasing smile, though the gratitude in her voice was unmistakable. "Your favorite," Marcus replied, placing a plate in front of her. "Big day today. The science fair setup starts at noon." Emma's face lit up. For 3 months, she had been working on her project about sustainable urban gardens and their impact on air quality in densely populated areas. It was ambitious, thoroughly researched, and exactly the kind of thing that made Marcus's chest swell with pride every time he thought about it. "I'm so nervous," Emma admitted, cutting into her pancake. "What if the display board falls over? What if people don't understand my presentation?" Marcus sat down across from her, his own breakfast forgotten. "Em, you've worked harder on this than anyone else at Lincoln Middle School. You've triple-checked everything. Your data is solid, your presentation is clear, and you know your subject better than anyone." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I believe in you." The apartment around them was modest, but meticulously maintained. Photographs lined the walls, Emma as a baby, Emma starting school, Emma winning her first academic award. Noticeably absent were any pictures of Marcus himself, any colleagues, or any hint of his professional life. The living room contained adaptive equipment for Emma's needs, a well-worn couch, and shelves packed with books on everything from marine biology to urban planning. Marcus had been raising Emma alone since his wife Jennifer had died in a car accident 5 years earlier. The loss had shattered something in him, but he had carefully gathered the pieces and rebuilt himself around a single purpose: giving his daughter the best possible life. He had left his previous career, taken a position that allowed him maximum flexibility, and dedicated himself entirely to Emma's needs and dreams. As they finished breakfast, Marcus glanced at the clock. "We should leave in about 30 minutes. The science fair doesn't start set up until noon, but I know you want to get there early." "Thank you, Dad," Emma said, and the depth of emotion in those 2 words spoke volumes about their relationship. Marcus began clearing the dishes, his movements efficient. He had learned to be both mother and father, nurse and advocate, teacher and protector. Every aspect of their lives had been carefully structured to support Emma's growth and independence, while acknowledging the very real challenges she faced in a world not always designed with her needs in mind. The Chicago skyline was visible through their window, towers of glass and steel reaching toward the overcast sky. It was a city of opportunity and obstacles, of accessibility laws not always followed and spaces not always inclusive. Marcus had learned to navigate this landscape, to anticipate problems, and to fight battles when necessary, always quietly, always strategically, and always with Emma's dignity at the forefront. As Emma went to her room to gather her project materials, Marcus stood at the window, coffee cup in hand, watching the city wake up. He thought about the science fair, about the pride he would feel watching Emma present her work, about the future that stretched before her, full of possibility despite the challenges. He had no way of knowing that before the day ended, He would be forced to reveal a part of himself he had kept carefully hidden for 5 years, or that a single moment of injustice would crack open the quiet life he had built around protecting his daughter. Lincoln Middle School's gymnasium had been transformed into a showcase of young scientific minds. Dozens of display boards lined the walls, each one representing hours of research, experimentation, and dedication. The air smelled of fresh paint, cardboard, and the slightly musty scent of the old building itself. Large windows along the eastern wall let in pale November sunlight that cast long shadows across the polished floor. Marcus pushed Emma's wheelchair carefully through the main entrance, her project materials balanced across her lap. The school had installed a ramp years ago, though Marcus had noticed it was steeper than ADA guidelines recommended. He made a mental note, one of many he kept about accessibility issues, but said nothing. Today was Emma's day, and he wouldn't cloud it with complaints. "Table 17, Emma said, consulting the paper she'd received a week earlier. "That's over by the stage." They made their way across the gymnasium, passing other students and parents, setting up displays. Some projects were elaborate, with three-dimensional models and digital presentations. Others were simpler, but no less thoughtful. Marcus could see Emma taking it all in, her analytical mind already assessing the competition, while her heart clearly raced with nervous excitement. Table 17 was positioned near the side stage, a good location with plenty of visibility. Marcus helped Emma transfer her materials, laying out the display board while she organized her research binder and plant samples. Her project was impressive: clear data visualization, professional formatting, and real soil and plant samples from the experimental rooftop garden she had convinced a local community center to let her maintain. "This looks amazing, Em," Marcus said quietly. "Really professional." "Thanks, Dad." Emma was arranging her materials with precise care, her hands steady despite her nerves. "Can you adjust the board angle a bit? I want people to be able to see the before and after photos from a distance." As Marcus made the adjustment, a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. A heavy-set security guard in his late 50s had entered the gymnasium, his navy uniform slightly rumpled, a radio clipped to his belt. His name tag read, R. Hutchins. The man's face was flushed, and he carried himself with the aggressive posture of someone who took his authority very seriously, perhaps too seriously. Marcus observed him for a moment, an old instinct kicking in. The guard's body language suggested someone spoiling for confrontation, someone who enjoyed the power of his position. Marcus had seen the type before, in many contexts. He turned his attention back to Emma, determined not to let anything distract from her moment. For the next 20 minutes, they worked together to perfect the display. Emma's passion for her subject was evident in every detail: the carefully labeled plant species, the color-coded charts showing air quality improvements, the photographs documenting the garden's growth over 3 months. She had even included a cost-benefit analysis showing how such gardens could be implemented affordably in schools and community centers throughout Chicago. "I think we're done," Emma said finally, sitting back in her wheelchair with satisfaction. "It looks good, doesn't it?" "It looks incredible," Marcus assured her. "Why don't I get us some water from the hallway? It's going to be a long afternoon once the judging starts." Emma nodded, already reviewing her notes for her presentation. Marcus headed toward the gym exit, planning to use the water fountain he'd spotted earlier. As he pushed through the double doors into the hallway, he heard a voice behind him, sharp, aggressive, and growing louder. "Hey, hey! You can't leave that there!" Marcus turned to see security guard Hutchins striding toward Emma's table, his face red with anger. Several other families had stopped setting up their displays, turning to watch the commotion. "I'm talking to you," Hutchins barked, now standing directly in front of Emma's table. "You can't block the aisle with that wheelchair. This is a fire hazard." Emma looked up, startled and confused. Her wheelchair was positioned beside her table, exactly where it needed to be for her to work on her display. It wasn't blocking any aisle. There was at least 4 feet of clearance on all sides. I'm not blocking anything, Emma said, her voice small. Marcus could hear the tremor in it even from the doorway, and something cold settled in his chest. "Don't argue with me," Hutchins snapped. "You kids think you can just park wherever you want. Move it now." Marcus was already moving back toward them, his footsteps quick but controlled. Other parents were watching now, some with expressions of shock, others with the carefully neutral faces of people who didn't want to get involved. "But I need to be at my table," Emma said, and Marcus could hear her voice breaking. "I'm setting up my science fair project. I need to—" "I don't care about your little project," Hutchins interrupted, his voice rising to a shout that echoed through the gymnasium. "You're creating a safety hazard. Either you move that wheelchair right now, or I'm calling the principal and having you removed from this event." Emma's face had gone pale. Her hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair, and Marcus could see the tears starting to form in her eyes. This was every nightmare scenario he had worked for years to protect her from. Being singled out, being treated as a problem rather than a person, being made to feel that her needs were an inconvenience. The gymnasium had gone quiet. 30 families, 60 students, all watching as a security guard berated a 13-year-old girl in a wheelchair for the crime of existing in a space she had every right to occupy. Marcus reached the table just as Hutchins leaned closer to Emma, his finger jabbing toward her accusingly. "I'm not going to tell you again. That's enough." Marcus's voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made Hutchins stop mid-sentence and turn. "Step away from my daughter." For the first time, Hutchins seemed to register Marcus's presence. The guard straightened up, his chest puffing out, clearly prepared to redirect his aggression toward an adult target. "You need to control your kid, buddy. She's violating fire safety regulations." "She's violating nothing," Marcus said, his voice still calm, but with an edge like steel underneath. "There's 4 feet of clearance around her wheelchair. The fire code requires 3 feet minimum. She's in full compliance." Hutchins's eyes narrowed. "Are you questioning my authority? I'm security for this school, and I'm a father protecting his daughter from harassment." Marcus stepped between Hutchins and Emma, his body language protective but not aggressive. "You need to walk away, now." "Or what?" Hutchins sneered, emboldened by his uniform and position. "You're going to make me? I can have both of you thrown out of here in 2 minutes. In fact, maybe I should. Troublemakers, the both of you." Marcus's jaw tightened. He could feel Emma behind him, could sense her distress even without turning around. Around them, the gymnasium remained silent, everyone watching this confrontation unfold. No one was intervening, no teachers, no administrators, no other parents stepping forward to say this was wrong. Hutchins pulled out his radio. "This is Hutchins in the gym. I need backup to remove 2 individuals." Marcus's hand moved to his jacket pocket. In 5 years, he had never once used what he carried there for personal gain or to intimidate anyone. He had left that life behind, had become simply a father, simply Marcus. But watching this man terrorize his daughter, seeing Emma's tears, hearing the threat to remove her from an event she had worked so hard for, he pulled out a leather wallet and flipped it open. The effect was immediate. Hutchins's voice died mid-sentence as he stared at the badge and identification card. His face went from red to white in seconds. Around them, people craned to see what had caused such a sudden change, though from their angles, most couldn't see what Marcus was holding. "My name is Special Agent Marcus Chen," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 15 years in federal law enforcement before stepping away to raise his daughter. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Chicago Field Office. Currently on extended personal leave, but still commissioned and still very much aware of federal disability rights law." He closed the wallet, but kept it visible. "Now, you're going to apologize to my daughter. Then you're going to walk away and let her participate in this science fair that she has earned the right to be part of. And we're going to forget this happened." Do you understand? Hutchins opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at Emma with an expression somewhere between embarrassment and residual anger. Look, I was just doing my job. Apologize, Marcus repeated, and this time there was no room for argument in his tone. I apologize, Hutchins muttered, barely audible. To her, not to the floor. Hutchins's eyes met Emma's briefly. I apologize for the misunderstanding. Marcus didn't move until Hutchins had walked away, disappearing through the gym doors with his radio still in hand. Only then did he turn to Emma, kneeling beside her wheelchair so they were at eye level. Are you okay? He asked softly. Emma nodded, but tears were streaming down her face now, tears of stress, relief, and the crash of adrenaline. Dad, your FBI was, Marcus corrected gently. I left the bureau when your mom died. I wanted to be here for you, full time. That part of my life, it didn't matter anymore compared to being your dad. The gymnasium slowly returned to life around them, the spell of shocked silence breaking as parents went back to helping their children with displays. Though Marcus could feel eyes still turning toward them, could hear the whispered conversations, he remained kneeling beside Emma's wheelchair, one hand resting on the armrest, giving her time to process everything that had just happened. Why didn't you tell me? Emma asked finally, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just genuinely confused. All these years, I thought you worked from home doing data analysis or something. You always said it was boring office work. Marcus took a deep breath. Because I wanted you to see me as just your dad, not as Agent Chen or Special Agent anything. Just the person who makes your pancakes and helps with your homework and drives you to physical therapy. He squeezed her hand gently. And because I left that life behind, it was real, Emma. When your mom died, I realized that all those years of cases and investigations, none of it mattered as much as being there for you. But you were helping people, weren't you? That's what FBI agents do. I was, but you needed help too. You needed a parent, not an agent who was never home and always preoccupied with the next case. Marcus stood, checking to make sure Emma's display hadn't been disturbed during the confrontation. Everything was still perfectly arranged. I don't regret leaving, Em. Not for a second. A woman approached their table hesitantly, Mrs. Rodriguez, one of Emma's science teachers. She was in her early 30s with kind eyes and an expression of genuine concern. Emma? Mr. Chen? I just heard what happened. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when it started. That was completely unacceptable. Is Hutchins often like that? Marcus asked, his tone carefully neutral. Mrs. Rodriguez's discomfort was evident. He can be overzealous about rules, but I've never seen him treat a student that way. I'll be reporting this to Principal Morrison immediately. I'd appreciate that, Marcus said, though to be clear, my daughter was in full compliance with all regulations. The only problem was his perception and his behavior. I understand completely. Mrs. Rodriguez turned to Emma. Are you still okay to present today? We can postpone your judging slot if you need time. Emma straightened in her wheelchair, and Marcus recognized the stubborn determination in her posture, so much like her mother. No, I want to present as scheduled. I've worked too hard to let him ruin this. Pride swelled in Marcus's chest. That's my girl. As Mrs. Rodriguez left to find the principal, other families began approaching, though their motivations varied. Some offered genuine sympathy and support, telling Emma how brave she was and how impressive her project looked. Others seemed more interested in Marcus's revealed identity, asking questions with barely disguised curiosity about his FBI work, about why he was there, about whether this was some kind of undercover operation. Marcus fielded these questions with practiced deflection, giving no real information while remaining polite. He had spent years learning to disappear, to be unremarkable, and the sudden exposure felt like a stripped wire, dangerous and uncomfortable. A father from the table across the aisle, a tall man in a business suit, approached with his son. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said to Marcus. "My son has type 1 diabetes, wears an insulin pump. Last month, Hutchins gave him a hard time about it at a school assembly, said medical devices weren't allowed without proper documentation. Made him feel like he'd done something wrong." He glanced at his son, who nodded confirmation. "Nobody said anything. I complained to the school, but nothing changed. So, thank you for standing up." Marcus felt a cold anger settling in his gut. "How many other kids has he targeted?" "I don't know for sure," the father said, "but I've heard stories. Usually kids who are different somehow. Kids with disabilities. Kids who don't speak English as a first language. Kids who stand out. He seems to, I don't know, take it personally when he sees them." After the man left, Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Chen? Is that really you? It's been years." "Hey, Sarah, I need a favor." Sarah Martinez had been his partner for 6 years at the Chicago field office before he left. She had respected his decision without question and had stayed in touch, sending Christmas cards and checking in every few months. She was one of the few people from his old life who knew the full story of why he had left. "Name it," she said without hesitation. "I need you to quietly look into someone. Robert Hutchins, security guard at Lincoln Middle School. Just basic background. Any complaints filed, any history of discrimination, anything that would flag him as someone who shouldn't be working around kids." This related to Emma. He harassed her at her science fair, made her cry, threatened to throw her out because her wheelchair was supposedly a safety hazard. It wasn't, and I shut it down. But a parent here just told me Emma isn't the first kid he's targeted. The line went quiet for a moment. Marcus could hear Sarah's breathing, could almost feel the anger radiating through the phone. Sarah had 3 kids of her own and a well-developed protective streak when it came to children. "I'll have preliminary information to you by tonight," Sarah said. "And Marcus, I'm glad you still know how to use that badge when it matters." "I just showed it, Sarah. I didn't use it." "Sometimes showing it is using it." Her voice softened. "How are you holding up?" "Better than Emma right now." Marcus watched his daughter, who was reviewing her notes with fierce concentration, using the familiar activity to regain her composure. She just found out her dad used to be FBI. And how'd she take it? "Still processing. We'll talk more tonight. Give her a hug from Aunt Sarah, and call me if you need anything else." After ending the call, Marcus returned to Emma's table. The gymnasium was filling up now as the noon setup period ended and families began arriving for the afternoon judging. The incident with Hutchins had created an undercurrent of tension that still lingered, but the excitement of the science fair was gradually overtaking it. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Did you ever, in your FBI work, did you ever have to deal with people like Hutchins, people who abuse their power?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Yes. Part of my job was investigating civil rights violations. Sometimes that meant looking into police departments or school systems or government agencies where people in positions of authority were targeting vulnerable populations. It's one of the reasons I went into that field, because I believe people in power have a responsibility to protect those with less power, not to exploit them." "Is that what you're going to do now? Investigate him?" "I'm going to make sure the school investigates him properly, and if they don't, then yes, I'll take further action. But Emma," he waited until she met his eyes, "that's not what today is about. Today is about your achievement, your incredible project, your hard work. Don't let him take that from you." Emma nodded slowly, then surprised him by smiling, a real smile tinged with defiance. "You know what? You're right. He's the one who should feel bad, not me. I earned my place here, and I'm going to give the best presentation of my life." "That's my girl," Marcus said again, and this time when he said it, Emma's smile widened. At 12:30 p.m., Principal Morrison appeared, a short woman in her 50s with steel grey hair and an expression of grave concern. She spoke to Marcus and Emma for 10 minutes, taking detailed notes, asking questions, and offering multiple apologies. She assured them that Hutchins would be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation, and that this kind of behavior was not representative of Lincoln Middle School's values. Marcus accepted her assurances politely, but without fully trusting them. He had seen too many investigations that went nowhere, too many promises of change that evaporated once the immediate crisis passed. Still, for Emma's sake, he maintained a cordial demeanor. As Principal Morrison left, the first judge arrived at table 17, a local university professor with expertise in environmental science. She looked at Emma's display, read her research summary, and began asking questions. Marcus stepped back, watching his daughter transform. All the stress and tears of the confrontation fell away as Emma talked about her project with confidence and passion. She explained her methodology, discussed her findings, and fielded the judge's questions with the poise of someone much older. Her face lit up when she talked about the potential for urban gardens to improve air quality in communities that had historically suffered from environmental pollution. The judge took extensive notes, asked for clarification on several data points, and examined Emma's plant samples with genuine interest. When the presentation ended, she gave Emma a warm smile. "This is exceptional work, truly exceptional. Thank you for sharing it with me." As the judge moved to the next table, Emma turned to Marcus with shining eyes. "Dad, did you see? She really liked it." "I saw, sweetheart. You were brilliant." More judges came throughout the afternoon. Each presentation seemed to bolster Emma's confidence further. The incident with Hutchins was fading into the background, overshadowed by the success Emma was experiencing. She was being seen for her intelligence, her dedication, her ideas, exactly as she deserved to be seen. Marcus watched it all with a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in his daughter, anger at a system that had allowed someone like Hutchins to terrorize children. Regret that he'd had to reveal a part of his past he'd worked hard to keep separate from Emma's life, and underneath it all, a growing determination that this wouldn't end with just an apology and an administrative leave. The science fair concluded at 4:30 p.m. with an awards ceremony. The gymnasium bleachers had been pulled out, and families filled the rows, creating a sea of faces illuminated by the afternoon sun streaming through the high windows. Emma sat in the designated area for participants, her wheelchair positioned in the accessible section at the front, while Marcus found a seat in the third row where he could see her clearly. Principal Morrison took the microphone to announce awards, starting with honorable mentions and working up to the top prizes. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez. "Call me when you can. Found some things." He silenced the phone and returned his attention to the ceremony. Category after category was announced. Best Biology Project, Best Chemistry Project, Best Physics Demonstration. Emma sat with her hands folded in her lap, her expression composed even though Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. "And now, for the award for Best Environmental Science Project," Principal Morrison announced. "This year, we had exceptional entries in this category, all demonstrating serious research and innovative thinking. But one project stood out for its thorough methodology, its practical applications, and its potential for real-world impact." Marcus leaned forward. "The award goes to Emma Chen for her project, Breathing Room, Air Quality Improvements Through Urban Community Gardens." The gymnasium erupted in applause. Emma's face transformed with surprise and joy as Mrs. Rodriguez helped her navigate to the stage via the ramp. She accepted the blue ribbon and small trophy with both hands, her smile so bright it made Marcus's throat tighten with emotion. When Emma returned to her seat, she looked directly at Marcus in the bleachers and mouthed, "We did it." Marcus smiled back, blinking rapidly against the tears forming in his eyes. Yes, they had done it. Despite everything, despite the harassment and the confrontation and the stress, Emma had achieved exactly what she'd set out to achieve. The ceremony concluded 30 minutes later. As families began filing out, many stopped to congratulate Emma, to compliment her project, to express admiration for her research. She handled each interaction with grace, explaining her work to anyone who asked. Her earlier distress completely replaced by the satisfaction of recognition earned. Mrs. Rodriguez approached as Marcus was helping Emma gather her materials. "Mr. Chen, I wanted you to know that the school board will be conducting a formal review of our security protocols and hiring practices. Principal Morrison is taking this very seriously." "I appreciate that," Marcus said. "I'd like to be kept informed of the investigation's progress." "Of course. And Emma," she smiled at his daughter, "congratulations. That was truly outstanding work. I hope you'll consider continuing your research. The University Partnership Program next year would be lucky to have you." After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Marcus and Emma loaded her project into their car, a specially modified sedan with hand controls and a storage system for Emma's wheelchair. The November evening had turned cold, the sun setting behind Chicago's skyline in streaks of orange and pink. As they drove home, Emma was quiet for several blocks before speaking. "Dad? About you being FBI. Can I ask what kind of cases you worked?" Marcus navigated through traffic, choosing his words carefully. "Mostly civil rights violations, hate crimes, cases where people were targeted because of their race, religion, disability, or other protected characteristics. I worked with communities that were being victimized and tried to hold the perpetrators accountable." "Is that why you knew so much about disability rights law, when you told Hutchins about the fire code requirements?" "Partly, but mostly I know it because of you, Em. When you were born, when we found out about your cerebral palsy, I made it my mission to understand every law, every regulation, every protection that existed to ensure you could live your life fully. Your mom and I both did." Emma was quiet again, processing. Then, "I think it's kind of awesome that you were an FBI agent, even if you don't do it anymore." "Yeah?" Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah. You were helping people who couldn't help themselves, like you helped me today." "You helped yourself today, Emma. You stood up to Hutchins even before I got there. You chose to continue with the science fair instead of letting him intimidate you. And you won an award through your own hard work and intelligence. I was just backup." "Important backup, though." Emma smiled. "The best kind." At home, Marcus ordered pizza, while Emma called her grandmother to share the news about her award. He could hear her excited voice from the kitchen, recounting the day's events, carefully editing out the confrontation with Hutchins, Marcus noted. That was a conversation for later, when Emma had processed it more fully. His phone rang. Sarah Martinez. "Talk to me," Marcus said, stepping into his bedroom for privacy. "Robert Hutchins has been with the Chicago public school system for 12 years. He's been moved between schools 4 times. Each time, there were informal complaints about his behavior towards students, but nothing that resulted in formal disciplinary action. The complaints have a pattern. He targets kids who are different in some way. Kids with disabilities, kids from immigrant families, kids with visible differences." Marcus's jaw tightened. Why was he never fired? Union protections, insufficient documentation, and administrators who didn't want to deal with the hassle. It's a story you've heard before. He's never done anything that crossed the line into obvious illegality. No physical contact, no explicit slurs. Just constant low-level harassment that made kids feel unwelcome in their own schools. Until today. Until today, Sarah agreed. What he did to Emma in front of witnesses, with the disability discrimination angle clearly documented, that's different. That's actionable. I've already had a quiet word with the field office's Civil Rights Division. They're interested. I don't want Emma dragged through an investigation. She won't be. We have multiple witnesses, including other families who've been affected. Emma would just need to give one statement, and even that could be arranged to be as stress-free as possible. Sarah paused. Marcus, this guy has been hurting kids for over a decade. You have a chance to stop that. Marcus looked through the bedroom door at Emma, who was still on the phone with her grandmother, her face animated as she described her project. She looked happy, triumphant, like the confident young woman she was growing into. Let me talk to Emma first, he said finally. This is her decision too. Fair enough. Call me tomorrow. After dinner, Marcus and Emma sat on the couch together, her trophy positioned prominently on the bookshelf. Outside, Chicago's lights were beginning to twinkle in the darkness, the city settling into its evening rhythm. Em, we need to talk about today, about Hutchins. Emma's expression became more serious. I figured. The school is investigating, but I've also learned that he's done similar things to other students over the years. A lot of other students. And there's a possibility of a federal civil rights investigation. Marcus turned to face her fully. That would require you to give a statement about what happened. It wouldn't be a trial or anything like that, just you explaining what he said and did. But it would become part of an official record. Would it stop him from doing it to other kids? If the investigation finds what I think it will find, yes, he'd likely be fired and barred from working with children again. Emma thought about this for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her wheelchair's armrest. The boy with diabetes, she said finally. The one whose dad talked to you, and there are probably others, right? Kids who didn't have someone to stand up for them. Probably. Then I'll do it. I'll give a statement. Emma met his eyes. You taught me that when you have the power to stop something wrong, you have the responsibility to stop it, right? Marcus felt his throat tighten again. Right. But Emma, I want you to be sure. This isn't your responsibility. It kind of is, though. I have a platform now. I won an award. People saw what happened, and I have you backing me up. Other kids might not have that. If I don't speak up when I can, then I'm just letting it continue. Pride washed over Marcus, so strong it was almost painful. This was his daughter, not just smart and determined, but principled and brave in ways that humbled him. Okay, he said softly, then we'll do this together. Emma leaned against him, and Marcus wrapped his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a while, father and daughter, watching the city lights and thinking about the future. The day had been difficult, revealing secrets and forcing confrontations that Marcus had hoped to avoid. But it had also shown him something important. Emma was stronger than he had realized. She didn't need him to hide his past to protect her. She needed him to stand beside her as she faced her present.